Welcome everybody to PGTV this morning. Thanks for joining us. Just to go through a little bit of housekeeping to start with, you'll notice that for many of you, you've opted to have your cameras off, but your mics are muted, which will obviously prevent any external noises, anybody at home doing homeschooling or in the shop serving anybody. We can keep that nice and quiet for the presenters and for everybody to hear. For the session today, we're joined by Gavin Kirkman, PGA CEO, and Jeff Stewart, who is the General Manager of Membership and Education. So one of the things we're going to do is we're going to work through, the gents are going to make an introduction, a presentation. They've got 3 questions that have been selected from Performance Golf PGA members, which they're going to work through, and then we're going to open up the mics so that everybody can have a little bit of a chit chat and a little bit of an informal discussion. Just so as you're aware, this session is being recorded because we did have a number of members expressing an interest in knowing what's going on, and we're going to share that internally later on. So for anybody, a large part of this content, if we can keep it to ourselves, it'd be great because it gives us the environment where we can have that open discussion. But obviously then to give those guys the opportunity to connect and be part of that experience. So we hope that the presentation is obviously and the conversation is positive, informative and engaging. And without further delay, I'll hand over to our PGA CEO, Mr. Gavin Kirkman.
Thanks very much, Lee, and to all the members, welcome and thank you for the opportunity to have this update with you today. And to Darren and Lee and Mark, it's always great to be working with Performance Golf and working through Performance Golf to talk to PGA professionals. What we want to do today is make this session as informative as we can, to share as much information and exchange information. Jeff's got a couple of slides that he'll just present quickly for you to give you an idea of some vocational projects we're working on, and then we'll move straight into the questions. We do have a lot going on across all the PGA business, but I hope today we can share some of the priorities and projects we're working on with you all. So Jeff, I'll hand over to you because we want to be as efficient as we can this morning while we've got the membership on the call.
Yep, thanks, Gav. Welcome everyone, and Lee, I will just check that everyone if you can see that, you can give me a thumbs up, then that means everyone else can see it. So welcome everyone. There's quite a few familiar names on the screen there, so thanks for joining Gavin and I and Lee and Mark and Darren today. We're going to try and be fairly brief, and apologies if anyone's attended any annual state meetings and that type of thing recently, and some of this you might be hearing this information again, but we'll try and be relatively brief. Got 3 PGA projects that we're going to update you on that all benefit members in one way, shape or form. So we'll get straight into it, Gav, and I'll start off with the PGA Golf Learning Hub. You all are hopefully reasonably aware that the PGA National Office is moving to Sandringham. Golf Links around, it was supposed to move around now, but you can imagine the challenges with the lockdown with that actually happening. And that leaves us with an empty PGA National Office, or a building that we can now use positively in a different way. And we have been working strongly through a project behind the scenes that's titled the PGA Golf Learning Hub, and it looks like it's going to remain called that. But effectively what it is, we're working to consolidate all PGA training and education programs under one brand, the PGA Golf Learning Hub. Not only PGA education and training programs, but all golf industry training and education programs, and also partner with training and education providers to bring them under the roof of the Golf Learning Hub. Now that's a physical roof, i.e. it's going to be a campus for students, but it's also a digital brand in a way, in terms of that's where all the e-learning programs and platforms will sit. At the core of the Golf Learning Hub will be 6 main areas of training and education. You can see those 6 that I've got in that little hub there: management, coaching, small business, turf grass management, hospitality and events, and tourism. And effectively through our research and information, we know that the majority of the golf industry, your golf industry, fits into one or more of those categories for their training, education and their jobs or their employment. And some are across multiple, obviously some people work across multiple. And what can we do as the PGA to maintain our status and increase our status as the primary training and education provider? Well, what we can do is make sure that we offer training in all those areas, not only to our members, but to the public. but also partner with trusted brands like Holmes Glen Institute. So when you're looking at that slide right now, the right-hand side, our RTO, which is titled the PGA International Golf Institute at the moment and on the Gold Coast campus, that'll be moving to Melbourne. It's already in progress. And our RTO will deliver management, coaching and small business qualifications, and Holmes Glen will deliver tourism, hospitality and turf grass under the brand of the PGA Golf Learning Hub. Other programs such as the Membership Pathway Program, the ACE Program, et cetera, will all be effectively sit under this brand or under this hub to make sure that, or to ensure the quality of all of those programs is the best they can possibly be. Effectively, everyone we present this to thinks it's a fantastic idea, to the point of Frankston City Council and the Victorian State Government through the Sport and Recreation Victoria are financially giving us some funding to get it up and running. And we're effectively converting our old, it's still our current national office, but it ultimately will be our old national office into a training and education campus for the benefit of the golf industry. So that's a quick summary on it. It's moving very quickly at the moment because there's some construction starting to convert some of our downstairs office space into classrooms and office space for staff, for education staff and that type of thing. So very quick update. There's many layers to this, many partners involved and that type of thing, but ultimately PGA members benefit because any product or program we develop through this hub will make available to the membership at effectively a subsidised discounted type rate, similar to what we do with the IGI at the moment. Anything I missed, Gav? Just to want to try and keep it reasonably brief on each of these.
Yeah, I think it's all about the focus for our PGA membership, but also to give our PGA membership as well access to those other key areas of tourism, hospitality and events and turf grass management. And that complements the 4 streams plus 1 that we work on as far as coaching, game development, business, retail and management. Plus we also know we have a tour and a playing pathway as well. So I think it will enhance the offerings for our PGA membership, but still be our focus, and the core business will always be the PGA Pathway Program and the ACE program as well. So
I'll move on. And by the way, happy to take any questions at the end about these, because at times we do feel like we're skimming the surface on something that's a massive project. Just moving the IGI from Queensland to Melbourne is a huge project in itself. So happy to take questions later on after we address those few questions that literally came through. Golfer retention plan, you might have heard a little bit about this through various meetings and offerings at the moment, but there is a golfer retention plan that's effectively backed by the Australian Golf Industry Council and is being pushed out by us, the PGA, Golf Australia and all the golf bodies, that revolves around 8 key pillars. It's an interesting time, I think you'd all admit. I mean, with Victoria in lockdown, New South Wales in lockdown, but partially in lockdown with golf, we did see coming out of the other lockdowns that people have a massive appetite for golf, for the recreation benefits, the exercise benefits, the community benefits, et cetera, et cetera. I don't need to tell you all the benefits of golf, but it's a great time to put in place a retention plan to make every attempt to retain the golfers that are coming into the sport through the positive aspects of golf, but also coronavirus. The coronavirus situation seems to have accelerated that somewhat. And the evidence is that it's happening all around the world. Our colleagues in Great Britain and Ireland, at the PGA of Great Britain and Ireland, are saying exactly the same things. They couldn't be busier, but obviously their lockdown situation in Great Britain is very different to ours in terms of their philosophy towards it. But I won't go around each pillar, but our research, our information has suggested, and this is just one way of slicing and dicing retention. There's many positive retention plans out there, but we wanted to put out something through the Australian Golf Industry Council, of which Gavin's the chair, something that's consistent for the Australian golf industry to adopt and effectively evaluate your facility or your practices in 8 main areas. And you can just basically say, am I doing this or am I not doing this? Then there's some documentation available on My PGA about how you can improve certain areas where you find a gap. We are very strong, Gavin and I, on number 1 being the key to this. Put the right person in the right role, and retention. I'm not saying it will take care of itself, but without doing that, 2 through 8 are virtually impossible. You need someone to take responsibility for golfers. That's just not retention. That's engagement with golfers, golfer satisfaction, golfer improvement, Is the facility welcoming? And we firmly believe, as you can imagine, and genuinely believe that PJ professionals are best placed to do that. The reason we've got committee member, et cetera, there is we know that there's remote facilities in Australia, et cetera, that don't have PJ professionals. So we do have to make that consolation that happens at some facilities. However, best practice around the world is that PJ members, PJ professionals are responsible for golfers. And that responsibility includes attraction, retention, engagement, improvement. Are you running fun events? What offerings do you have, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the golf retention plan. It is on my PGA. I sort of say it's sitting on my PGA and it will stay sitting on my PGA unless you all go and access it. It's just sitting there unless people are engaging with it. So I just encourage you to go there. There's a little checklist there, a one-page checklist that I encourage everyone to do. And you just basically say, okay, do we have someone in a role and responsibility? Do we know why people are coming to the sport and back to our club? What offerings do we have? Are we welcoming? What improvements program? You just basically rate yourself in each of those with a yes and no, and then take strategic action if you need to. So, Gav, I'd go so far as to say that if we were to promote any sort of action item out of today, go to, or Lee, we could send the checklist around to everyone who's on the call or whatever it might be. Just do the checklist, and you might give yourself 8 out of 8. You might be flying here, but it might expose just a couple of things that you hadn't thought of before that might help, particularly as golf really is ramping up coming out of coronavirus again, as it is in some states already, but we know that'll happen in Victoria and New South Wales when things settle down somewhat. Do you have anything there? You're chair of AGIC, so this is a bit of your baby a little bit, so
yeah,
I'll let you have a say.
Probably to say that, you know, the success, and we've shared this with other PGAs as well, but we know the success has to be driven through the PGA professional. The checklist is probably just for a conversation, whether you're a head pro, a manager, director of golf, whatever hot role you're in. I know a lot of head pros and contracted pros on this call today, but just to identify and go and have that discussion with your facility or club manager, with the board of the club, because we are experiencing the resurgence and business is good and strong, but we've also got to start looking at what our sport's going to be like in the next 3 to 5 years. So I can only encourage you to have a look and then share the document through the PGA professional through to your facility or club.
Yeah, and we've been a bit stop-start, unfortunately, as is the case with many projects. I'm sure it's the same for many of you, with some strategies over the last 18 months because of the lockdowns coming and going. And this is one where the plan is for us to speak with every PJ member about retention, and Golf Australia to speak to every golf club, whether that's the president, the general manager, etc., and to actually make sure that the club as a whole believes in retention, not just the PJ professional on their own, and they're battling with the club about what they should be doing in this space. So we're trying to take a holistic approach to it, but because the lockdowns keep coming, we sort of start that project, and it's not the appropriate time to necessarily be speaking to golf clubs in Victoria, for example, about this sort of thing. So you can imagine it's been a little bit stop-start, but hopefully that ramps up a little bit, Gav, in the next couple of months.
Yeah.
The last one that we'll talk about before we just throw to questions and cover those few questions, Gav, is the PJ member career success plan. Now, just by chance, it has 8 pillars as well as the retention plan. That's not by design, if anyone's wondering. And you can see that I'm a bit of a fan of that wagon wheel PowerPoint template or whatever you might call it. So this one's a really important one, and it has been happening behind the scenes for quite a while. It's effectively us identifying and integrating the 8 things that we can do for you as your members association to give you the best chance for career success. So there's effectively 4 main categories: education, services, logo and marketing, I'll call that one, and advocacy. And I won't read everything out, but effectively our job as your association is to create a good initial member with high competency to be a PJ professional. So the membership pathway program and its quality is a high determinant of someone's career success. Actually, I'll backtrack for a moment. The biggest determinant of someone's career success is them, all right? Their own initiative, their own skills, et cetera, et cetera. So I want to sort of just say that we want to acknowledge that an individual charts their own success. And, you know, we're not magic here in terms of turning someone into a magical PJ professional. You chart your own success more than anything else. But what can we do? Create a good initial member with good knowledge, skills, and competencies. Then provide you with the ACE program with the opportunity to maintain or develop those skills and competencies further. Then we can provide you with employment services. So if you're looking to change jobs, move to become a director of golf, etc., etc., what services do we provide primarily through the state offices to assist you with contracts, resumes, position descriptions, etc. So what services do we provide you? Then what services and information do we provide golf clubs in that space in terms of their staffing structures, position descriptions, etc., etc., and making sure what we tell golf clubs and what we tell members are one and the same. So that matches up for the benefit of the golf industry, but more importantly for the benefit of PGA members. Our cause is the success of our PGA members. So we'll never shy away from the fact that, our primary cause is your success. We all know that golf industry success and club success normally leads to member success as well. So we need to tie that in as well. Then what logo access do we provide you to promote yourself as a PGA professional? And then how do we promote you to the public? So that's really important. You using the PGA logo to promote your skills and competencies is really important. And then us promoting that logo and those skills and competencies to the public is very important. One without the other doesn't work. Yes, it might work internally at a club, but broadly, it doesn't necessarily work. And the last category of these 8 pillars is advocacy. What do we do to advocate your skills and competencies to the industry? That's the golf industry, so to speak. And then what do we do to advocate your skills and competencies outside of the industry, which might be a bit of an interesting one, but outside of the industry means to local government, state government, federal government. And some of the most obvious ones are the work we do behind the scenes that you may or may not be aware of with the Fair Work Commission on making sure that certain award wages reference PGA members, penalty rates are maintained within awards and that type of thing, so that PGA members' career success or remuneration is as high as it possibly can be. I'm a big believer that PGA members should be paid very well, as you can imagine, and we do not want to promote a race to the bottom with wages. We want to promote that PGA professionals are paid well and we attract great people to the industry and to PGA membership. So that's the PGA member career success plan. We have various staff working on each of those 8 areas. But the thing that we're doing better than, I'd argue that we're doing better than before, was doing it in an integrated way. Rather than the ACE program being independent from the membership pathway program, we're doing that together to make sure that anything we create in the membership pathway program that's valuable, it gets pulled across to the ACE program and vice versa. So that's one example, and there's others. Gav, just over to you. I mean, this is an area of passion for yours as well, and responsibility as CEO. So not sure if I missed anything that you want to touch on.
Jeff, I think you have covered it really well, and probably for this group, with Lee and Mark and Darren, you're very proactive in the marketing and selling what you do as a PGA professional, but selling all your products, whether it's from retail to golf lessons, merchandising, everything you do with, especially your engagement with your members at your facilities, but also to the wider membership. But I think it's very important that if we're going to continue to grow and engage with the wider industry and market the brand, we're just encouraging all members to utilize the brand as much as possible, so that one goes hand in hand, so that a consumer at any level, being a social golfer, a member golfer at a driving range looking for lessons online, they can build the trust and the relationship and the loyalty with the PGA professional at your facility. So I think it's really important that you can see what Jeff has worked through here with the Vocational Members Council. He's broken it up, and I think there's a lot of work for us to do here, but this is one project from a member service and support that we're going to be working on, and we just hope we get some free air that we can work on it in a time frame where all our members have got time to engage, because it's going to be a two-way street. Members will have to engage in this program, but we do know our members at the moment are working, for those who are open outside of Victoria, are working incredible hours and trying to get good work-life balance at the moment. So it's a balance of everything with what we're working on here. So again, passionate about this area as much as I am about education, but I know this group is doing a great job in marketing and promoting what you do and how you do it best. Lee, I know we're conscious of time, but should we move, have some Q&A on Jeff's 3 slides, or should we move straight into the questions that were provided by the members?
Well, let's thanks very much, first of all, on behalf of the members for that presentation, and and keeping us up to speed on everything that's happening. What we might do is we might softly move into questions, and if we get a bit of quiet times, we'll drop in a couple of those pre-submitted ones. How does that sound?
That's fine. And yeah, I've got some notes on some of those questions are asked too, so we'll make sure we cover them. I mean, just Jake was one. I'm just seeing if they're all on. And Jake, Brent's on, isn't he? I saw Brent Dale was on.
Yep. So so maybe we'll open it up with Brent. Do you want me to read out the question?
Yeah, Brent can read it out if you like. It's up to you, Lee.
I was gonna leave them anonymous.
Okay, sorry. I've got blown.
So what we'll do is we'll open up with Brent's question. Brent says, I would like to see the PGA have a proper crack at building a junior golf pathway with a coaching curriculum, in brackets, a decent one, like a mixture of TPI and US kids. I know we have My Golf, but I feel it could be developed into something much better. It may have been improved over the past couple of years. And I think this next part probably speaks to a lot of PGA members in terms of the trend. But Brent says, look, I know it may have been improved over the past couple of years, but I haven't followed up with it because it's always been average. Instead, we've chosen, like many, to develop our own way of doing things.
Oh, yep. Thanks, Gav. I'll take that, and then you can jump in. Yeah, Gavin and I are closely involved with My Golf. So just for transparency, we are closely involved with My Golf in terms of being part of the joint venture with Golf Australia on My Golf. And there's a couple of points, and thanks for your question, Brent, and importantly, just thanks for your interest in junior golf, which is obviously, without being too cliched, obviously very important as it is for every other sport. You're right, Brent, in that My Golf is just a component of the pathway, and you've in a way identified that it's not the pathway. It's just it is. I say just, but saying that with just to clarify, it's effectively the introduction program for 5 to 12 years old. It's not designed to be a all-encompassing pathway. So that's important. And in a way, you've identified this. The remainder of the pathway isn't fully built, and it's actually something that Golf Australia, in particular, by being formally as the NSO responsible for junior golf, have identified that there's pretty significant gaps in the pathway for golf, when you compare it to a 6 or 7 year old starting cricket or footy through Auskick for those in Victoria and that type of thing, that the pathway is kind of mapped out all the way through to actually playing football as an adult. And one of the challenges we have as in the industry is access to the course, which other sports don't have for kids, for young kids in particular. And I think you'd all agree that kids, and my experience with kids in golf and other sports, is they want to play as soon as possible. They don't want to be just hitting balls or whatever. And I'm sure you're all acutely aware with that. And that conflict between traditional golf clubs and golf clubs in general, between kids wanting to play and you actually wanting to be on the course and play, and then course access at times that's convenient for them, parents, other sports, school, all those types of things, which is challenging. Because you imagine most other junior sports, although there are exceptions, is that Saturday morning is traditional for junior sports, particularly playing footy and cricket and that sort of stuff, or Sunday mornings. Good luck getting course access at those times at golf courses for juniors, for 6-year-olds, for example. So there are some big challenges there in pathway when we talk about pathway involving playing or instruction on course and those types of things. My view is that, and I think that there's some really good components of TPI and US kids, so you're right there, Brent, but it's not necessarily at more levels of instruction and skills tests and that sort of thing is the answer to the pathway. The answer to the pathway in some ways is course access in some sort of way and program. So My Golf Junior League has attempted to address this through competition play for kids in a team environment. But unfortunately, there just hasn't been great uptake of My Golf Junior League around Australia. And again, the evidence suggests that's because it's very challenging to get course access to actually implement My Golf Junior League. And ironically, that might start becoming harder as golf maybe takes off a bit after coronavirus and that type of thing. So that's certainly a challenge. I'll just come back, Brent, to your point about My Golf and the curriculum. The curriculum is there primarily for individuals who are not comfortable with setting up their own program. And I'll say this with a bit of a concession. Gavin, jump in if I get this wrong. My Golf it does have a curriculum, etc., but it's primarily designed to be a brand that everyone can get behind, parents can recognize, kids can recognize, schools can recognize, etc. To just bring everyone into the sport. It's not designed to be a prescriptive curriculum. When we worked with Golf Australia on it, we said very openly, we trust our PJ members to deliver junior golf the way they possibly already have been successfully, or design their own program, one that fits the fact, do they have a bunker access? Do they have course access? Do they have putting green access? When can they play? When can they not play? We know that every course will be different, and therefore the curriculum was just a suggested curriculum, i.e., and I say this with a bit of concession, do your own thing, we trust you, but just get behind the brand. So if that requires at your facility a slightly different curriculum, fine. If it requires a completely different curriculum, effectively fine. It's designed to be a brand that everyone can get behind. It's not designed to be prescriptive, because we have a very big difference compared to other sports. We have a professional workforce who is effectively already doing these things, as opposed to Auskick and Master Blasters cricket, where parents, we got, what do I do in week 2? They need a prescriptive curriculum. You guys don't. So knock yourself out, write a curriculum that works for you, works for your facility, works for equipment access, golf course access, practice range access, write one that works for you, but get behind the MyGolf brand so that parents start to get behind golf the way they get behind Auskick, Master Blasters cricket, et cetera, et cetera. That's the, hopefully I've covered enough to sort of cover that a little bit. Golf Australia, with some consultation with us, are currently working on a pathway matrix, a matrix where it's basically saying where do kids enter the sport and then work their way through the sport, and where are the gaps. So they've got knowledge that there's a big pathway gap. And the other thing is MyGolf is currently under a full review in terms of how it's positioned in the marketplace. And it's also being reviewed with the assistance of the Australian Sports Commission, and the individual who's working with us on it built effectively Master Blasters cricket, had some involvement with Auskick. He has very good knowledge of what the community is looking for from a junior sports program. Not just, hey, we can't just build it the way golf wants it to be. It's what parents want. It's what kids want. It's not what necessarily always what we want. So he's giving us some insights into the success of those programs as well, which is obviously very important. So because they're behemoths, Auskick, Master Blasters, etc., they're rolling. And we need to learn from them and actually tap into the same sorts of things of them. Is it the teamwork that the kids are after? Is it the camaraderie? When there's certain times and days of the week that work better than others, all these sorts of things. So sorry for long winded answer, Brent. So we covered a lot of ground there. It's a big topic.
Yeah, and that's great. So, sorry, go ahead, Gavin.
Yeah, and Lee and Brent, great question. It is going through a full review at the moment, and Sport Australia are involved as well. Because we do want to compete against the other sports. So we'll be able to update you. I think that review is due to be finished in the next 4 to 6 weeks, and we'll start communicating some of the data out of that review that's put on by Sport Australia as well.
Yeah, and Gav, the communication or access to the review, the survey for PJ members is going out any day. So there's a dedicated survey around MyGolf and junior. Look, it's broadly about junior golf. So put all your views in that. And then it'll all be collated by Sport Australia, Golf Australia, and us to say, well, what's next for junior golf in Australia?
Not a problem.
Thank you. So that's one of our pre-submitted questions. Do we? What I might do is invite anybody to either put up your hand or use the chat box, because I don't want to unmute everybody. It could go crazy. So if you have a question to put forward, please feel free to put your hand up or use the chat function. We'll move on to another question while we wait on those. This one is from Jake Nagel at Queanbeyan, who is on the fortunate side of the border at the moment. Why do you think there has been such a change over the past 10 to 15 years with the PGA trainee associates category? And a further comment there, it feels like it's now got to the point where if they can break 80 a few times, they can become a PGA member. So the question, I suppose, is alluding to the playing standards.
Thanks, Jake. We might need a couple of days to respond to this. No, I'm just joking. We'll be able to cover it as best possible, and then we can always have a bigger chat. And Jake's name, if he's on the call, he came up in the office the other day, Gav, didn't it? We were looking for, believe it or not, it was instructional records that we're moving offices, as you all know. We found a series of 6 instructional records, literally vinyl records, stacked away in the PGA office, and we were missing one, Kel Nagel's. And we're like, wonder if Jake has it. Well, we found one on eBay to complete the set, Jake. So if you're looking for one, let me know and we can point you where they are for your grandfather's vinyl record for instruction. So Jake, thanks for your question. It's an interesting question because, and I'll just talk about some of the mathematics and statistics about this first. In the past 20 to 25 years, the playing standard for males has only gone up by 0.75 of a shot. So it's not overly significant. It's less than one shot that the PGA playing standard has actually gone up, so to speak, or become slightly easier by 0.75 of one shot. That's for males. For females, it has gone up, which was a definite statistical requirement. That's gone up to 6.75 to 2.75, which is still arguably, and I'll say arguably, not equitable either. The failure rate of females is still higher than males, even with that concession in terms of shots. And we need to consider ways of addressing that so that we just keep attracting more females into the profession, which is really, really important. In addition, there was multiple stages, as I'm sure you're all aware. There used to be multiple stages of passing, and now there's one of 30 rounds. And statistically, again, the multiple rounds was redundant because there was no evidence whatsoever that someone would go pass, pass, fail. They basically go pass, 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 pass. You can imagine once they've passed one, they'd keep passing. So there was some redundancy there in terms of multiple stages. And the other point about just mathematics, your standard, your association standard still remains the strongest out of all the PGAs in the world by a fairly significant margin in terms of playing standard and volume of rounds. So that's more of a bit of a badge of honor. It doesn't have any meaning, so to speak. It's not something that we sort of push out there, but it is just to put things in context. We're still the strongest in the world. In terms of the playing standards actual objectives, I put some thought into this, and I've obviously been involved with this for many years. So the objective of the playing standard is multiple. It's a playing standard to be a PGA professional, to play as a pro. So basically it's a playing standard to check off, yep, you can play pro-ams in the future, et cetera, et cetera. That's one. It's playing ability for your ability to coach the sport. So it creates a standard of saying, okay, here's our standard for coaching the sport. It's a validation of knowledge of the sport. It's one way of basically saying, hey, this person knows the sport well, which we want PGA professionals to obviously be. So it's a validation of knowledge. It creates exclusivity of membership. So it means that not anyone in the world can be a PGA professional. So it creates membership exclusivity, and it creates public recognition as PGA professionals being experts. So all five of those are very, very important, and all five of them have varying levels of importance, in my opinion. But playing standard it's like a balance between exclusivity and inclusivity. So when you make the playing standard more exclusive, i.e. much harder, inclusivity, our ability to attract a wider range of people with a wider range of skills diminishes somewhat. So it is a real balancing act in that space, and our job behind the scenes is to balance that out as best as possible. My personal view, after observing it for many, many years, is I feel the balance right now is about correct in terms of exclusivity versus inclusivity. However, we still have, interestingly, for those who weren't aware, we still have a bit of a lack of supply of PGA professionals. We literally have jobs come up with 0 applicants or very few applicants for decent jobs. So it's an important thing to know that our supply isn't exactly where it kind of needs to be. However, I'm not necessarily a fan of saying, hey, we have a lack of supply, let's make the playing standard 10. That's not the answer either. So it's a really important thing. So we have a lack of supply. Interestingly too, we are now, as a PGA, getting ourselves, which is great, into a greater variety of jobs than ever. Management, small business, sports administration, playing, coaching, et cetera, et cetera. So we've got our tentacles, which is great because it's good for PGA membership and good for the brand, is we're getting into a greater variety of jobs. And if we want to keep doing that, and we want to occupy as many jobs within the golf industry as possible, and effectively be the #1 brand in golf, and which we already are, but also take as many golf jobs, decent golf jobs, we need to be aware of this exclusivity versus inclusivity balance. And that's really, really important. So I hope that answers it. I sort of answered it, hopefully, Jake, half mathematically and half sort of philosophically around keeping that balance and that type of thing. We are still maintaining good exclusivity, in my opinion, while still improving our inclusivity in terms of attracting more and more people to PGA membership. And that's the balance that we play. Gav?
And Jeff, just to finish on that, probably for everyone, the Vocational Members Council are very protective of the playing average. They know that from where Jake's talking about 15 years ago, it was a little bit different for a tour school, and that's why we talk about the 5th pathway. So we've now got another pathway that if they want to play, they can go down the tour school. As many years ago, you still had to, members like Roger Davis, Ian Baker Finch and so forth, they had to go through a traineeship, not the associate program, the old traineeship to become a PGA professional. So I think it's important that we've moved, excuse me, but as the PGA of Australia is one of the PGAs in the World Alliance, as Jeff said, we are by far have the most robust playing assessment. You've got PGAs now that are just going off GolfLink handicap data, that if they've reached a certain level as an amateur golfer, that'll allow them not to have to do any playing assessment tests through an associate or training program. So I think what you're saying, Jake's very valid, but I can let you know through the Vocational Members Council and the board, they're very protective of maintaining a high playing standard to become a PGA professional.
Thanks, gents. We've just had a question come in there on the chat from Courtney at Wembley in Western Australia with regards to the management and processing of the juniors going through the programs. It's quite in depth there, so I might leave that. What I'll do is I'll email that through to you guys after.
Yeah.
Just with regards to the top of the search ranking, Courtney, I might address that from a digital marketing perspective. Your own search experience is different for everyone. So depending on your location, your browsing history, it will pop up different results. So I probably wouldn't go on your own Google search when you're analyzing the MyGolf advertising, because if I type in Junior Golf Perth and everybody on this chat types in Junior Golf Perth, we're all going to get different results based on our own browsing experience and histories. So potentially given the benefit of the doubt on that one, but it seems like there's a legitimate question there with regards to the processing of individuals. And so let me just copy that and I'll paste it into an email to you guys.
At a glance, it's not an area that Gav and I work in, so we'd probably have to refer it on to someone who works
but from Courtney's point of view, I have a strong point of view on what Courtney's saying, so we'd be great to answer that back to the group. So
you're right, though, the challenge is we need to remove barriers to PGA professionals. That is the key thing, and if there's barriers, then we need to know what they are and then address them. Yeah. So that's the main gist of that question, I think.
So we've had that third question that we submitted, we pre-submitted. It's actually been reiterated a couple of times in the chat, on the private chat. And I guess it's probably a two-part question. And this original one is from Matthew Milne at Port Arlington Golf Club in Victoria. How are things progressing with Sandringham? And that's part one. And part two is what resources are being aligned with Golf Australia to reduce our costs and grow golf tournaments?
Yeah. So great question. And you'll see, I'll touch on this a little bit in the next Members Digest that goes out. So to summarize, and I'm conscious of time, we were supposed to move into the Sandringham facility, which is called the Australian Golf Centre, July 8. And that was practical completion. We're probably expecting to get in there by October now. The facility makeup is there'll be administration on the top floor of the building that'll cohabitate PGA of Australia and Golf Australia. Roughly between both organisations, there'll be about 90 staff, about 32 with us, and around 60 with Golf Australia. The facility will have a high performance centre, which is being put under Golf Australia's control. There'll be a service centre, which for all the retail specialists on this call is the smallest service centre / pro shop you'll ever see. But unfortunately, when our board made a decision, Sandringham Links Management weren't going to have a pro shop, but we're working with Sandringham Links Management to have a service centre just for check-in and to get basic balls, tees, gloves, caps. There'll be coaching and club fitting services provided by the PGA at the facility, and that's the same as what we currently do at Sandhurst. And we'll employ some coaches to look after that part of the business, and then that's sitting with Jeff and Stuart. But after we've operated for 12 months and we have a good look at the business, it'll be reassessed, but we will open with some PGA professionals employed to deliver those services. from the Sandringham Golf Links Management, and the course is called Sandy Golf Links. Sandringham Golf Links Management have full control and lease over the 18-hole golf course, the 30-bay driving range, and the cafe and restaurant. So they'll be operating that as they've done in the past, and then the PGA will blend in and work with Sandringham Golf Links Management against the coaching and club fitting services, and the service centre will actually share staff in the service centre. There will be there's 3 high performance bays. There will be one of the high performance bays that will be allocated to the PGA, and through Jeff and Nick Belowski, we'll be able to communicate the process on how members in Victoria or even interstate members, when they come down, can have access to that high performance bay, and the whole lot of them will be the same. So there'll be 3 bays, all identical. When we come to share services, and that's a great question from Matt, there will be efficiencies to be able to, once we build those efficiencies and we put them in place, to be able to hopefully put those savings and develop tournament golf and the tour. And there's a lot of positive that I could talk about a lot with the tour. We just got no free COVID airspace to run our tour at the moment because of the restrictions and border restrictions in place. But from shared services, the 3 areas that we're working on where our staff will align with Golf Australia are in the public affairs and marketing, which is communications and marketing, as well as corporate services, which is finance, HR, OH&S, and all back of house. And the 3rd area is tournament operations. And we'll take leads in tournament operations. That's delivery of tournaments, logistics, staging, and everything on the ground at a tournament. And then with the public affairs and media, we'll boost the team there. So, when I talk to Darren and Lee and Mark about marketing objectives, we'll have a marketing team that you'll be able to talk to from whole of golf with a PGA focus in there. So we're not jumping in and more or less having our staff employed by both organisations. We're just bringing these structures together. We've been doing that work for about 6 months, and the next step of that work was to cohabitate and get in the same building. Key areas outside the shared services where the PGA will have a focus will be Jeff's area in membership, education and tour. There'll be no shared services in those areas because we are the PGA. Our cause is the success of the PGA member. So that's our membership base and that's our focus. The education, we want to become the educator for golf, and we don't want to have confusion or be competing against other educators. So that's where the education will stay. And we are the tour, and we control the tour at all levels. And that's where Golf Australia, with their events, the Australian Open, Queensland Open, Vic Open, they'll fit into our tour schedule. Knowing with the tour, we have our collaboration agreement with the WPGA Tour of Australasia, and that's working really well. Golf Australia's key focus outside the shared services, and they'll have 3 general managers across that area as well, will be participation, and will be clubs and facilities, and will be high performance. So they're the areas that we will stay working, and I don't like to say it, I get in trouble, but we'll be staying in our own lanes so that we're not competing and things that have happened in the past. And that's the agreement we've got in place with the CEO and also their board. The stuff that's got to be taken, that will have a lot of work to be done, is the commercial, everyone. That's the other part of this wagon wheel, is that's going to take time because there's commercial agreements in place that can't be blended. We will do some work together on commercial. We will do some work together on broadcast, but broadcast sits with us because that's the tour. Other commercial relationships will just have to be nurtured with NDAs signed on ensuring there's no, they've got to be done. You can't do a lot of commercial business horizontally in some areas. You've got to do it vertically. So we've just got to see where we can complement each other in some of our commercial deals. So I hope that gives a good understanding of what we're doing, but all the funds and the efficiencies and anything that takes place will be reinvested back into each organisation. But on Matt's question about tournaments, we hope to have a much stronger tournament schedule. And what we had planned, we did see some growth. What we did have planned for Q4 this year and Q1 next year but there's going to be some announcements over the next week or so that you'll see. We've got to move everything again because of the pandemic. So thanks, Lee.
Excellent. Thank you. That's our questions, obviously, that have been pre-submitted and come through. What we might do, Mark, is just open up the mics. And if anybody wants to ask any questions or just say thanks to the guys for visiting and discussing with us. And if anybody has any questions on the way, please feel free to either shout them out or follow up with an email, which I'm happy then to work through with Gavin or Jeff as appropriate.